What I'm about to share with you in the next few minutes is not something you will hear in a routine doctor's appointment. It is not something that gets discussed enough in mainstream medicine. And honestly, it is something that I believe every single person over the age of 50 on this planet deserves to know. Because what the research is telling us, and I mean the most current, most rigorous, peer-reviewed clinical research coming out of the world's top institutions, is that cancer after 50 is not simply a matter of bad luck or bad genetics. It is in enormous part a matter of daily biological conditions that you are either creating or preventing inside your own body every single morning when you wake up. And that realization, once it truly lands, changes everything about how you approach your health. My name is Dr. Victor. I have spent over 2 decades working as an oncologist and cancer prevention specialist. I have sat across from thousands of patients who came to me frightened, confused, and feeling completely powerless against a disease they believed was beyond their control. And the most important thing I have ever done in my career is show those patients, with science, with data, with clinical evidence, that they are not powerless, that the conditions inside their bodies are far more responsive to their daily choices than they were ever told. And today I am going to share with you the 5 most powerful cancer prevention habits available to any adult over 50, ranked from foundational to life-changing, building toward the single most impactful one, the one that I call the master lever, the one habit that amplifies every other thing you do for your health. And I promise you that by the time we reach it, you will understand not just what to do, but exactly why it works at the cellular level inside your body. So please stay with me all the way through because each habit I share builds directly on the last. And skipping ahead means missing the synergy that makes this entire protocol so extraordinarily powerful. And before we begin, I want to ask you something. How old are you right now, and what is your single biggest health concern as you get older? Drop it in the comments below because I read every comment personally, and your answer helps me create content that actually serves the people watching. Now let's get into it. Habit number 5, and I want to start here because this one sounds simple on the surface, but operates through a biological mechanism that most people have never had explained to them properly. And once you understand it, I promise you, you will never think about your food choices the same way again. So here is what is happening inside your body right now. Every single cell in your body is constantly dividing and replicating. And in a healthy body, a process called DNA mismatch repair acts like a molecular proofreader, scanning your genetic code for errors and correcting them before they become mutations, and before mutations become tumors. And here is the problem that nobody talks about enough. After the age of 50, the efficiency of your DNA repair enzymes naturally declines by approximately 30 to 40%, meaning your body becomes a less reliable proofreader at precisely the moment when decades of accumulated cellular wear have produced the most errors that need catching. And into that already compromised system, ultra-processed foods, packaged snacks, fast food, processed deli meats, sugar-sweetened drinks, introduce a flood of compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which are inflammatory molecules that directly impair those already weakened repair enzymes, making a vulnerable system even more vulnerable. And the research on this is not subtle. A 2023 study from Imperial College London, following nearly 200,000 adults, found that those with the highest ultra-processed food consumption had a 32% higher risk of colorectal cancer and a 19% higher risk of breast cancer compared to those eating primarily whole foods. And a companion study from the National Cancer Institute confirmed that ultra-processed food consumption was independently linked to a 28% increase in overall cancer mortality, even after controlling for obesity, smoking, and physical activity levels, meaning the food itself, not simply the weight it causes you to gain, is driving the risk. And I want to tell you about a patient of mine, a woman I'll call Margaret, 61 years old, who came to see me after her brother was diagnosed with colon cancer, and she wanted to understand her own risk. Margaret's diet was what she called perfectly normal. Cereal in the morning, a deli sandwich for lunch, packaged crackers in the afternoon. And when I ran her inflammatory markers, her C-reactive protein and interleukin-6 levels were both significantly elevated. Over the following 12 months, Margaret made one targeted change. She replaced one ultra-processed item in each meal with a whole food equivalent: oatmeal with berries instead of packaged cereal, grilled chicken instead of processed deli meat, an apple and walnuts instead of a snack bar, and at her follow-up, her CRP had dropped by 41%. Her IL-6 had normalized completely, and her gastroenterologist noted a reversal of the low-grade mucosal inflammation that had been flagged in her previous colonoscopy. And for you, the action step is exactly that simple. Not a complete dietary overhaul overnight, just one swap per meal, one ultra-processed item replaced with one whole food equivalent starting today. And when you layer this habit with habit number 4, which I'm about to share, the reduction in your systemic inflammation becomes compounded in a way that research shows is far greater than either change alone. So keep watching. Habit number 4 is one that almost every adult over 50 is getting dangerously wrong. And when I explain the specific biology behind it, I think you will understand why I consider poor sleep to be one of the most underappreciated cancer risk factors in modern medicine. So let me tell you what I actually think about when I think about sleep as an oncologist. I think about something called immunosurveillance, your body's internal cancer detection and elimination system. And at the center of that system are specialized immune cells called natural killer cells, or NK cells, whose literal biological job is to patrol your bloodstream and tissues, identify cells that have undergone malignant changes, and destroy them before they can establish themselves as tumors. Think of them as your body's internal security force running 24 hours a day. And here is what most people do not know. NK cell activity is almost entirely regulated by your sleep cycles, specifically the deep, slow-wave sleep stages that dominate the early hours of your night, because it is during those stages that your body releases a cascade of cytokines, proteins that directly amplify NK cell production and activation. And after the age of 60, the proportion of slow-wave sleep your body naturally generates drops by approximately 50%. Meaning your cancer surveillance system is running at half capacity unless you actively work to protect it. And a 2019 study from the University of Chicago showed that just 1 week of sleeping fewer than 6 hours per night reduced natural killer cell activity by 70% in healthy adults, 70%, and a 2021 analysis reviewing data from 27 studies and over 2 million participants found that chronic short sleep was associated with a 40% increased risk of breast cancer, a 36% increased risk of prostate cancer, and a 55% increased risk of colorectal cancer in adults over 55. And I had a patient, a man I'll call James, 64 years old, a retired engineer who was genuinely proud of how well he functioned on 5 to 6 hours of sleep. He came to me following a precancerous polyp finding. He didn't smoke. He wasn't overweight. He exercised regularly, but his sleep was short and fractured, and we implemented a structured sleep protocol, a consistent 10:30 p.m. bedtime, complete darkness and no devices after 9 p.m., a bedroom temperature of 67 degrees Fahrenheit, and magnesium glycinate supplementation to support slow-wave depth, and within 8 weeks, his sleep duration had increased to 7.5 hours, with a measurable doubling of his deep sleep stages, and his follow-up blood work showed a 38% increase in NK cell count. And for you, the single most powerful starting point that sleep researchers consistently identify is what they call anchor sleep, committing to the exact same wake time every single morning, including weekends, because your wake time anchors your circadian rhythm more powerfully than your bedtime does. Set that alarm, protect that wake time, and within 1 week, you will see measurable improvements in your sleep architecture. And when you combine optimized sleep with the dietary changes from Habit 5, your body's inflammatory baseline drops to a level where your immune surveillance system can finally function the way it was designed to. But as powerful as these first 2 habits are, they are preparation for what comes next. Because habit number 3 directly intervenes in the biological clock of your cells in a way that scientists only fully understood within the last 15 years. Habit number 3 And I want to reframe something before I explain this one, because the word exercise carries so much psychological weight for most adults over 50 that it causes people to tune out before they even hear what the science actually says. So I am not going to talk to you about exercise. I am going to talk to you about purposeful daily movement and its extraordinarily specific effects on cancer biology. And at the center of this habit is a molecule called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1, a hormone that promotes cell growth, which is exactly what it sounds like, both necessary and dangerous. Because in youth, IGF-1 drives healthy development, but after 50, chronically elevated IGF-1 levels, which are directly caused by sedentary behavior, act essentially as a fertilizer for cancer cells, accelerating their proliferation and making them more resistant to your immune system's attempts to eliminate them. And regular moderate movement is one of the only lifestyle interventions proven to lower baseline IGF-1 levels, while simultaneously upregulating a tumor-suppressing protein called P53, which functions as your cell's most powerful internal stop signal against malignant growth. And a 2020 study from the American Cancer Society, tracking 186,000 adults for 10 years, found that those who engaged in at least 150 minutes of moderate movement per week had a 42% lower risk of colon cancer, a 38% lower risk of breast cancer recurrence, and a 26% lower risk of all-cause cancer mortality. And a 2022 study published in The Lancet found that simply breaking up prolonged sitting with 5-minute walks every hour reduced blood markers of tumor-promoting inflammation by 27% without any structured exercise program whatsoever. And I treated a patient, a woman I'll call Eleanor, 72 years old, 2 years post-treatment for early-stage breast cancer and terrified of recurrence. She had arthritis and couldn't do traditional exercise, so we built her a movement protocol entirely around what she could do. A 20-minute brisk walk after breakfast, standing during television in the evenings, 5-minute stretch and walk breaks every hour during her reading time, and at her 12-month follow-up, her IGF-1 levels had dropped by 23%. Her NK cell counts had improved significantly, and she described her energy and mental clarity as completely transformed. And for you, the implementation is this. Start with a 20-minute walk after your largest meal of the day, because research from Stanford confirms that post-meal walking specifically suppresses the blood glucose spikes that independently fuel cancer cell metabolism. You need no gym, no equipment, just your front door and a consistent commitment. And when this movement habit is layered on top of optimized sleep and whole food nutrition, your IGF-1, CRP, and IL-6 levels, 3 of the most important cancer-promoting molecules in your body, drop in a way that no single intervention achieves alone. Now, habit number 2 is the one that genuinely surprised me when I first reviewed the full body of evidence behind it, and I think it will surprise you too, because it involves something you are doing every single day without realizing its direct connection to your cancer risk. Let me ask you something honestly. How would you describe your stress level over the last 6 months? Because what I'm about to share may reframe your answer in a way that motivates you to take it far more seriously than you currently do. Habit number 2, strategic stress regulation. And I know what you may be thinking. Stress management sounds soft. It sounds like a wellness buzzword, not a clinical oncology intervention. But I want to share with you exactly why that perception is not just wrong, but dangerously wrong. Because in over 2 decades of oncology practice, I now consider chronic psychological stress to be one of the most profoundly underestimated drivers of cancer after age 50. And the mechanism is a molecule called cortisol, your primary stress hormone. And while short-term cortisol release is healthy and adaptive, chronic cortisol elevation, the kind produced by persistent stress, anxiety, loneliness, grief, or unresolved emotional burden, triggers a cascade of biological consequences that are deeply and directly relevant to cancer biology, because chronic cortisol suppresses the expression of BRCA1 and BRCA2, your 2 most critical DNA damage repair genes. It upregulates an inflammatory pathway called NF-κB, which directly promotes tumor cell survival and resistance to apoptosis, the natural programmed cell death process that eliminates damaged or malignant cells. And in plain language, what this means is that chronic stress tells your body to keep damaged cells alive rather than eliminating them, which is the precise biological foundation upon which cancer develops. And a 2022 study from Ohio State University's Comprehensive Cancer Center found that chronic psychological stress reduced tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte activity by 48% in adults over 60. And a 2023 meta-analysis from the Karolinska Institute, drawing on data from nearly 500,000 participants, found that adults with chronically elevated stress markers had a 43% higher risk of hematological cancers and a 31% higher risk of lung cancer compared to low-stress controls. And I had a patient, a man I'll call David, 67 years old, a recently retired executive who described himself as finally relaxed, but whose blood work told a completely different story. His cortisol rhythm was inverted, low in the morning when it should peak and elevated at night when it should be near zero. His BRCA1 expression was measurably suppressed, and we implemented a structured daily protocol. 12 minutes of slow diaphragmatic breathing each morning using a 4-7-8 pattern, a 15-minute evening walk without his phone, and consistent weekly social engagement. And at 6 months, his cortisol rhythm had normalized, his NF-κB inflammatory markers had dropped by 31%, and his lymphocyte counts had improved measurably across the board. And for you, the minimum effective dose is documented clearly in research from Carnegie Mellon University. Just 12 minutes of daily mindful breathing practiced consistently for 8 weeks reduced salivary cortisol by 26% and measurably improved NK cell counts in adults over 55. You do not need a therapist or an expensive app. You need 12 minutes, a quiet chair, and slow breathing in through your nose for 4 counts, holding for 7, releasing for 8. That is your starting point. And when this practice is combined with the sleep optimization from Habit 4, the cellular repair window your body receives each night becomes dramatically more effective because cortisol is one of the primary suppressors of the deep, slow-wave sleep stages we already discussed. And everything we have covered so far, the nutrition, the sleep, the movement, the stress regulation, all of it is prologue. Because habit number 1 is the single habit that ties every mechanism we have discussed into one unified biological intervention, and the research behind it is so compelling that I want to be very precise and very careful about how I present it to you, because it is frequently misunderstood, oversimplified, and dismissed, and it deserves none of those things. Habit number 1, and I want to be absolutely clear that what I am describing here is not a weight loss strategy. It is not a diet trend. It is a specific biological protocol with documented anti-tumor mechanisms confirmed in human clinical trials. And it is simultaneously the simplest and most powerful zero-cost cancer prevention intervention I have encountered in my entire career. And the mechanism at the center of it is a cellular process called autophagy, from the Greek meaning self-eating. And here is how it works. When your body enters a fasted state, typically between 13 and 16 hours after your last meal, it activates a remarkable internal process by which your cells begin to identify, dismantle, and recycle damaged cellular components, including premalignant cells, misfolded proteins, and defective mitochondria, essentially running a deep internal diagnostic and cleanup cycle that removes the biological debris that accumulates into cancer when left unchecked. And in healthy younger adults, this cycle runs reasonably well. But after age 50, autophagy efficiency declines sharply, reduced by an estimated 40 to 50%, largely because modern eating patterns, with food available and consumed from early morning to late at night, mean that most adults never spend enough consecutive hours in a fasted state to trigger robust autophagic activity. And when damaged cells are not cleaned up, they accumulate. And accumulated cellular damage is the biological substrate from which cancer grows. And a 2019 study from the University of Southern California, published in Cell Metabolism, found that adults who restricted their eating to a consistent 10-hour window each day for 12 weeks showed a 34% reduction in IGF-1, a 29% reduction in CRP inflammatory markers, and a measurable upregulation of autophagy markers compared to controls, and a landmark 2022 clinical trial from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, following adults aged 55 to 70, found that those practicing a consistent 14-hour fast showed a 37% reduction in markers of oxidative DNA damage and a 41% improvement in tumor suppressor gene expression with no caloric restriction required. And I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Thomas, 62 years old, a school principal who came to me with a history of precancerous colonic polyps, a family history of pancreatic cancer, and a fasting glucose sitting at the high end of the pre-diabetic range. Thomas was not overweight. He ate what most people would consider a reasonable diet, but his eating window was 16 hours long, black coffee at 6 a.m., a late snack at 10 p.m., and his autophagy markers were among the lowest I had measured for a non-obese patient his age. We implemented a simple protocol: first meal at 8 a.m., last food by 6 p.m., water and plain black coffee freely throughout the fasting window. And within 90 days, his fasting glucose had dropped from 109 to 92. Within 12 months, his follow-up colonoscopy showed complete resolution of the low-grade dysplasia that had been present in his previous 2 scopes, a finding his gastroenterologist described as remarkable, and his autophagy biomarkers had increased by 51%. And for you, the implementation requires no calorie counting, no meal skipping, no complicated protocol. You simply need to establish a consistent eating window of 10 to 12 hours and then protect it. If your first coffee with cream is at 7 a.m., your kitchen closes at 7 p.m. If breakfast is at 8 a.m., dinner ends by 6 p.m. Water, plain black coffee, and unsweetened tea are free throughout the fasting window, and your body does the rest. And here is the profound truth about why I call this the master lever. Time-restricted eating amplifies every single mechanism we have discussed today. It lowers IGF-1, the same pathway targeted by movement. It reduces cortisol rhythm disruption, supporting the stress regulation we covered. It increases the depth and efficiency of slow-wave sleep. And it reduces systemic inflammation even when your diet is not perfect. Pull this lever and everything else in this protocol becomes more powerful. So let me bring this all home for you now, because what we have covered today is not a disconnected list of health tips. It is an integrated biological strategy built on 5 interlocking mechanisms. Habit 5, eliminating ultra-processed foods, removes one of the primary suppressors of your DNA repair machinery at exactly the age when that machinery is already under the most strain. Habit 4, optimizing your sleep architecture, restores the natural killer cell activity that is your body's primary internal defense against early-stage cancer, activity that drops by up to 70% with chronic short sleep. Habit 3, daily purposeful movement, directly lowers IGF-1, the growth hormone that fertilizes cancer cell proliferation, while activating the p53 tumor suppressor that tells malignant cells to stop. Habit 2, strategic stress regulation, normalizes the cortisol rhythm that suppresses your 2 most critical DNA repair genes and keeps damaged cells alive longer than they should ever be. And Habit 1, daily time-restricted eating, activates autophagy, your body's deepest and most fundamental cellular cleanup system, and amplifies the power of every other habit on this list. And I want you to hear this from me directly as your doctor in this moment. It is never too late. The research I have shared with you today did not come from studies of 25-year-olds with perfect genetics. It came from studies of people exactly like you, adults in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, who made targeted daily changes and produced measurable, documented, clinically verified biological improvements. Your cells are not fixed. Your risk is not sealed. Every single morning you wake up is another opportunity to shift the conditions inside your body in a direction that protects you. And now I have one final question for you. Of these 5 habits, which one are you going to start this week? And what is the single biggest obstacle standing between you and that first step? Tell me in the comments because I genuinely want to know and I will respond personally to as many of you as I possibly can. And if this video gave you something valuable today, please hit the like button right now, subscribe to this channel so you never miss what I share next. And send this video to one person over 50 in your life who deserves to have this information, because that one share could genuinely change the trajectory of someone's health. The link to my complete cancer prevention after 50 protocol is in the description below. It includes a detailed 30-day implementation guide for all 5 habits with weekly progression targets, a comprehensive anti-inflammatory nutrition plan built specifically for adults over 50, a sleep optimization checklist that addresses every major factor that disrupts slow-wave sleep in this age group, and a stress biomarker tracking guide so you can measure your own cortisol rhythm improvements over time. Hundreds of people have already gone through this protocol, and the biological changes they have documented are real, significant, and in many cases their doctors have described as remarkable. The link is below. Click it, commit to it, and let's give your body the conditions it needs to protect you for decades to come, because you absolutely can, and your future self is counting on the decision you make right now.